Hello, you guys. It's Coach Jay here, and it is Throwback Thursday. I normally don't post on Throwback Thursday, but because of the climate that we are currently in, I thought, you know what? Why not share throwbacks of stories of experiences that I've had growing up in America as a black woman. I know that a lot of you guys who are privileged, who don't understand uh, why we are ranting and raving and protesting. I know that for those of you who live in your bubble, you're confused as to why we're so upset. I want you guys to understand that racism is overtly prevalent. This is not something that we are just making up. This is not something that we are just saying just because we want to be noticed. There are real issues that need to be addressed, and we're going to continue to rant and rave in March until the changes that we want are happening. So I wanted to share with you guys. I've had, I have so many stories of just me being racially discriminated against, but I just wanted to share with you guys three of those experiences. Um, so I would say maybe about 14 or 15 years ago. This was early on in my marriage. A little bit of backstory. For those of you who do not know, I am married to a light skinned Latino man who is Dominican. Okay, so early on in my marriage, I had went to a family event, and at this family event, this was the first time that I was meeting the majority of his family, and so this was exciting. And a lot of people came up to me because they heard about me and they wanted to know who was this new addition, so I was just as excited to meet everyone. But I remember this one conversation that I was having with somebody in particular, and the conversation is going well. I'm like 7 or 8 months pregnant at the time. We're having a conversation, and mid conversation, she's like, "You speak very well," and I. I didn't know how to respond to that. I never know how to respond to that, actually. I mean, this is something that has been told to me over and over again. But she kind of caught me off guard, and I didn't know what to say. And I remember just saying, "Oh, okay, thank you," or it was just it was why, like, I don't understand. Like, I'm American, and I went to school like the majority of us, and we learned English. So I didn't understand why she had to point that out. Like, why couldn't we just have a genuine conversation where we're just learning about each other? Why did you have to point out how I speak? And it was frustrating because this is something that I have always struggled with just growing up. I, even around family, I would talk and they would say stuff like, "Oh, you're trying to sound white. Why do you talk that way?" And I'm like, I'm not trying to be anything other than me, and I'm not going to feel bad about how I speak, but that was, very interesting. Like, "Oh, you speak very well." And how should I have spoken, and what did you expect? One thing I want you guys to understand, those of you who are Caucasian, of Caucasian descent, and those of you who are privileged, that people of color, we're human beings. We are very intelligent, and we're not animals. So please, when you tell someone that's of a darker hue than you, that's melanated, that they speak well, just know that that is highly, highly offensive. It's very offensive when you say that. It's equivalent to giving a dog a biscuit after you asked the dog or commanded the dog to do a trick. Like, it's offensive. Because we're human beings. We're not a separate species from you. We're human. So we're very articulate. We have the capabilities and the faculties to be able to retain information. We're human. The only difference is that maybe our hair texture is different, our skin tone is different, but we're human beings. But this is something that as Black people we deal with all the time. Another thing is if you are of white descent, please do not say stuff like I'm not racist, I don't see color. I hope that you do. I want you to see my melanated skin. I want you to see my color. I want you to see me. That's the thing. We're raising our hands because we want to be noticed. We want to be accepted. We want to be included. We want to be loved. So when you say stuff like I don't see color, that's also racism. Okay? Another situation I had, I'm going to go back into time. This is like, I was in daycare. So I must have been, I want to say about 6 or 7 years old. So I'm in daycare. I'm just being a kid, my inquisitive self. When you're at this age, you're always asking adults questions. And I remember we were preparing to go to the park. And so I don't know if this was a teacher or if this was a monitor. I'm not sure who she was exactly. This was years ago. But I remember her making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the class. And we were about to go to the park and she's making the sandwiches, and I wanted to stand next to her as she was making them and just make conversation. And I remember her getting to the end of the loaf of bread, and she had two end pieces of the bread. And she was like, I'm down to these two end pieces. And you know what? I'm going to make this for you and your brother. I have a twin brother. So she said, so this sandwich, there's not enough for you guys to have your own sandwich. So with these two end pieces, I'm going to cut them in half and they're going to be for you and your brother. And I remember being young and not understanding, like, why would you decide for that to be for me and my brother? Like, none of the sandwiches were labeled. And I understood this as a young kid. None of these sandwiches are labeled. So how can you decide after you hand them out who gets the two end breads? And not only that, how do you decide that you're going to split it in half and only give us a half while everyone else has a whole, right? So that bothered me. Meanwhile, I'm over here talking to you, engaging with you, laughing, having a great time, and you're going to do me like this? You're going to give me the end bread, and not only that, I'm going to have a half of a sandwich? So that bothered me. Fast forward to we're at the park, and I'm thinking, all the sandwiches are in a bag, right? She's not going to remember what she said. So we get to the park, we're all running around, we're playing. Now it's time to eat lunch. So we're sitting down and they're handing out the sandwiches, and I'm hoping I'm going to get my full sandwich because she's not going to remember about the half. And lo and behold, my brother and I ended up with that half a sandwich with the two end slices. And I was just so upset. But even then, I knew that we were being discriminated against. The daycare that I went to was predominantly white. It made sense, and it was just our norm. This is something that has happened to me just my entire life. But the third experience that I want to share with you guys, and this is something every time I share this story, it really chokes me up. It really does. I was in third grade, another predominantly white school. I grew up in Park Slope, Brooklyn, and I was an A student. Anyone who knows me, I'm a perfectionist. My mother was the type of person where she pushed education, making sure that we did our homework, made sure that we studied. So I didn't play when it came to school. So I had taken a science test. I was in third grade. I will never forget this. Taking a science test. I got my test back, and I believe I want to say a 99, a 98 or a 99. And I got the test back, and I knew that I had aced it. This is one of those, I know I got 100%. So I get the test back, and I realized that, okay, I got one answer wrong. So I look at the answer, I'm like, how did I get this wrong? So I looked at it, and I realized by asking other students, hey, did you get this answer wrong? And I realized that she had marked an answer that was correct. She had marked it wrong. And I was like, oh, she made a mistake. And I was like, okay, so all I need to do is go to her and tell her that she made a mistake, and I'll get my 100%. So I go to my teacher and I say, hey, you, by accident, you marked this wrong. And then she said, let me see. She said, I never make any mistakes. What you did, you must have erased it and put the right answer. And I'm like, I was offended because I would never in a million years do anything like that. I'm the type of person, if I do something wrong, I will admit. I'm not a sneaky, vindictive, a person that just, I don't do stuff like that. was just so bizarre that she would assume, as a third grader, that this is something that I would do. Why would I do that if I had a 98%? Wouldn't I just be happy? Like, okay, I got one wrong and that's it. But she clearly made a mistake. I go home, I talked to my mother and I said, Mommy, the teacher is accusing me of lying and accusing me of erasing the answer and putting the correct one when I didn't do that. And so she was like, you know what, I'm going to go down to the school and we're going to rectify this. So she comes down to the school, she speaks to the teacher. The teacher tells her, you know what, I don't believe your child. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this to the principal. So we made an appointment to meet with the principal. Mind you, this is like a week and change later. So my mother and the teacher make an appointment, and then we go to the principal's office. So it's me, it's my mother, it's my teacher, and it's the principal. And we're in the principal's office. Mind you, I'm looking around because I've never been in the principal's office before. I've never been sent to the principal's office. I have never dealt with detention, anything like that. So I'm sitting there, my heart's beating fast, and I'm feeling like, what did I do? I'm in this situation, and I should have just left it alone, right? But my mother was not going to leave it alone. She was like, this is not right. I believe you, and we're going to fix this. So we're in the office, and the principal ends up resorting to the fact that, you know what, I don't know what happened, but what we're going to do is we're going to have you take this test over. So I'm thinking, okay, sure, I'll take the test over. My mother was like, I don't think that's fair. I said, you know, it's okay. I will take the test over. No problem. Okay. So fast forward, we decide to take the test over. My teacher decides for me to miss recess for me to take the test over. I, being naive, didn't think to study. And so I take this test over. I get the results back, and I ended up with a 77 to an 80. I ended up getting more answers wrong than I had did before. But that answer that I knew that I got right, I made sure that was right again. But I ended up getting more answers wrong because now the memory of what I had studied with had left me. So now I got looked at as the one who lied. And that was that. The teacher was like, see, I told you. That stuck with me. That was I'm in my 40s. This was third grade. That has never escaped my mind. Racism is prevalent, is overtly present. People are murdering us while we're unarmed. It's being filmed, and it's not stopping. For you Caucasians who are bothered today by the mere fact that this is being inundated in your face and you're tired of it, imagine being uncomfortable your whole life. Imagine having to prove your worthiness. Imagine having to prove that I'm not an animal, that I'm articulate, that I'm a human being. I'm just like you, but my hue is just of a different color. Imagine having to prove, hey, can we be civil? We're not even fighting for equal rights at this point. We're trying to prove that our lives matter too. I want you guys to sit and marinate in your privilege, because this is something that as people of color, we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.